The following program is a high-definition production of Blue Ridge PBS.
Hello and welcome to What It Takes. I'm Dr. Rose Martin. On today's show, we're going to take a journey. We're on the road to create excellent schools. My guests today are providing a roadmap for excellence and unraveling the how-to mystery of school improvement, including the greatest gift a school can give a child. And how do they know? They've measured success in schools across the country using a practical three-step process. And during today's show, they will also reveal practices that get in the way of the ultimate goal, student achievement. Let's get started. Joining the conversation today is Dr. Harvey Perkins, CEO and founder of the Urban Learning and Leadership Center. He's a 37-year veteran of public education, specializing in school administration, school improvement, and curriculum design. As a national speaker, Dr. Perkins guides teams across the country to improve their schools and helps them turn their ideas and dreams into realities. He has co-authored a widely used guide on school improvement, Standing in the Gap. Welcome. And with him today is a co-author also Dr. John Hodge. John is the president of the Urban Learning and Leadership Center and former director of the Achievable Dream Academy. But that's not all. John is also a master teacher and presenter. In fact, he also holds the distinct honor of serving our country in the 7th Infantry Division of the United States Army. I guess you know a little something about discipline, standards, and achievement, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you both so much for coming and joining us today for this important conversation. And I think, Harvey, I'm going to toss to you first. Are we in a state of chaos in American education in schools across this country?
Well, I guess that depends on who you want to listen to. But I would say if you rank and file citizen out there, they'd probably say yes, because they read the articles in the media, they look at the local news, and sometimes they even talk to educators, and that's the scary part. And we don't sell ourselves very well. And from the outside looking in, I would say a lot of people think we're chaotic.
And how do you define chaos?
Well, I think that there's a sense of high accountability right now. And so I don't think schools are in chaos at all. I do think that the level of accountability we find in public schools, regardless of the state, is quite high, and I think that some school environments are quite tense because of that.
So if you're going into a school and we've got kind of differing opinions, maybe we are in chaos, maybe we aren't, how does that dialogue start, that open, frank telling of the truth, let's look at what's going on and let's make change? Where does it begin?
Yeah, well, with us, it starts with data analysis. We want to look at where your school performs on several different measurements, but we also want to hear from you. Where do you want this school to be in 5 years? Beyond just assessment or test scores, where do you want this school, what do you want it to look like 5 years from now? That starts a dialogue, and we start with where you are and we move toward where you want to be. It's very practical.
Yeah, I think, John, yeah, you're exactly right. We've found many schools that people would say are a failing school, but you go into school and you talk to the people on the ground who work in that school every day. There are people there that are full of passion for kids. And they're hard workers, and they really, really, really want to do well. And so when we start talking to them, the first thing we want to find out is, what are you doing here in this school that we can build on? Because in every school there are successes. Like we said earlier, sometimes we don't celebrate those successes nearly as much as we do the failures. But so starting to build on the areas that are strengths, that's a good approach, and I think we use that everywhere we go.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And who does that conversation take place with?
The whole school community. We want
Okay.
to talk to not just the faculty and staff. We want community members. We want administration. It really does require that the entire school community come together behind a common vision for a school to actually sustain excellence. And so our conversation is very, very broad.
As a matter of fact, one of the foundational principles of our model, which we'll talk about in a few minutes, is what we call distributed leadership. But you go into a lot of buildings and that is only given lip service. You can't find people on the front line, in the classrooms, teaching kindergartners down on the ground, who can tell you what are the problem-solving strategies we use in this building? Have you been engaged in the dialogue on how to solve the problem? So when we mean distributed leadership, we mean talking to everyone in there, including the custodial staff and the secretaries and the people that work in the lunchroom. Everyone is a part of the community, and they all have to be involved in the discussion.
Well, let's talk a little bit about this training that you do and your work with the Urban Learning and Leadership Center. Can you describe that a little bit for us? What do you do and where do you go, and how do you make these changes occur and have these conversations?
I'll start with one of the first things we do is we give an anonymous survey that asks members of the staff where the school is relative to several different domains. We get that information back, we analyze the data, and we use it to start a conversation with the school about its current status. We do this data analysis coupled with an analysis of your achievement data. And we also do interviews with staff to really find out what you're feeling about the current status of the school.
How do people
and that's really
feel about
important.
that?
Let me jump in on that one. Well, that's interesting because, as you know, when you have people coming in from the outside, sometimes you get the Chamber of Commerce speech, you know. So everything's wonderful here. We're going to tell you how wonderful it is. And so it's important when we do our diagnostics in a school that we triangulate all the information. So the idea is we'll have structured interviews. We'll start with the principal, obviously. The principal should know, and we want to find out what level of truth we're getting there. Sometimes, again, if we're outside sources and not trusted, we do get somewhat of a Chamber of Commerce speech, but then we're going to talk to students, we're going to talk to random faculty members, we're going to talk to the leadership team, and the more you begin to hear the same themes over and over, and then they come out in the anonymous online survey, and then it supports the data, you begin to triangulate and find out, well, this is the real truth for this building, and then we can start building on that.
How does that conversation go when people realize it's time to change and the numbers are revealing something that maybe we didn't quite reveal on our own?
I think what the public should be pleased about is the fact that when we talk to educators across the country, there is a willingness to change when you are faced with the data. These numbers tell us the truth. There are many professionals that we run into who say, okay, well, based on where we are, we really do need to change. And our diagnostic process actually opens up the window of opportunity for us to help a school.
I've heard you say meaningful change, less is more. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Well, for us, less is more is a mantra we use everywhere, because you can ask any teacher in the country and they'll tell you we don't have any lack of plans. Lord, we could fill this room today with the plans in most schools, some required by the federal government, some required by the state, many by the local, and then you have a grant. The problem is the content of those plans is only known by a few people, usually the people who wrote them, and they're usually very heavily theory-based documents, a lot of data, but nowhere does it come down and actually tell the classroom teacher, well, what is it you're supposed to do differently? What is it I'm supposed to do differently in the classroom? What we try to say to folks is change is tough, and you mentioned a little bit earlier change. It's hard to change adult behavior. All of us know that. Anybody who's worked in churches or schools or civic groups know it's hard to change adult behavior. So we're saying, let's pick 2 or 3 research-based, real data-driven things. In other words, things we know that work, that your data and your interviews have showed us that your school needs to be doing. And let's come up with strategies to drive that home, but then let's monitor and measure those strategies to make sure everybody does them.
Well, let's take that idea and fit it into your framework. Your acronym SAME, the SAME framework, and you've got a garden leaf metaphor. Can you tell us a little bit about that and how it all fits together?
SAME stands for Social, Academic, and Moral Education, and it's our framework for working with schools. The social environment deals with how members of the school community behave, and all of us would agree that, you know, behavior in school is important. The academic environment, the A, deals with how members of the school community engage in teaching and learning. And what we say to teachers is, if you are bored with your own lesson, then heaven help the kids. And then there's the M, and the M stands for the moral domain, and that deals with what members of the school community believe. Do you believe that the kids in your school can be successful regardless of their circumstances? Belief systems are very important. And these things have to be addressed, as Harvey said earlier, in a culture of distributed leadership.
And one thing that kind of makes our model very unique, and I think but it resonates, people really like it at the schools because it makes sense to them. Each of these domains, social, academic, and moral, operates in the adult community in a school,
Yes.
and it operates in the student community. And let's just take an example. We talk about social, how people treat each other inside the walls of a building. Well, we typically think of students right away.
Yeah.
Is behavior okay in the building, you know? But sometimes we go in buildings where the problem is the big people. The problem isn't the little people. You can watch the big people. They don't even get along. And so before you can begin to collaborate, you've got to cooperate. You've got to learn to live together. And so there are some cultures in buildings that are just toxic. They are not nice places, and kids pick up on that. And so in each of the domains, the academic, automatically we think of teachers. Are the teachers teaching well? But what about the students? Do they have skills? John, talk a little bit about the students' skills for academics.
Do students know how to take notes? Do they know how to ask critical questions? Are they organized? I mean, these are skills that students need, not just in our current school, but when they go off to college. These are skills that will help sustain them even then. So we're thinking long-term with the initiatives that we do in school.
And you talk about students speaking green. What does that mean?
Well, green is the color of money. And regardless of the community you come from, there may be a language within your community, within your home, and that's beautiful. That's extremely appropriate because my language is my language no matter where I'm from. But then there's a corporate language. When you go for an interview, there's a certain way you will present yourself. And the sad part is, if no one ever tells you that, you won't know. And you could be a really intelligent kid with lots of skills and miss an opportunity. So code switching deals with knowing what language to use in the right context.
And how does that go over when you talk about that?
Oh,
When
well,
you're
you
in
got
the
to be
schools?
careful because you got to be very respectful. You got to be, people bring kids along and adults along so they know that we're not criticizing anyone's pattern of speech or their ethnicity or their background. But we're trying to say, do you want your kid living with you when they're 40? We don't find many parents who like that. And we say, and then we have to make them marketable in the world. And the last thing, and the thing that probably separates our company and actually maybe keeps us from being a huge company, is the idea of moral. People say, well, you can't talk in public schools about moral domain, moral dimension. Well, as John defined it earlier, it's what we believe. And we think that what kids believe and what adults believe about teaching and learning is hugely impactful. For example, in corporate America, people expect you to talk about corporate values. And they're very different. You go to Google, and you know, you've got a company where by value system, it's all independent, it's laid back, we value that. Then you go to IBM, very buttoned up, very corporate, and yet it helps define what's acceptable. What we say is everything's not acceptable. If you're going to play on this team, meaning our faculty, what are the rules? What are the things that are acceptable here? What do we expect of you? I think sometimes we sell faculty members short, and schools kind of fall short because we don't do a good job of defining the values that are livable here in this building. So we work with adults on that.
So how do you help people internalize respect and compassion if that's not something they're used to doing?
Well, we start by saying that students model what they see. And we, as the adults in the building, regardless of your job title, have to be what we want students to become. So don't show kids a respect poster. Show them what respect looks like in your interactions with each other. That is a much more powerful message for students.
As a matter of fact, John, we went on Long Island in a school last week and working with them, trying to help them understand that they didn't have a great reputation outside the school. And part of that was because the message being sent and carried by the people in the school outwardly was not very good. We were walking in a class change, and a student was walking along and came around a corner, hit another student quite by accident, dropped his notebook, papers went everywhere, everything flying. I saw 5 students stop and help that student pick up their papers in the middle of a crowded hall, and they weren't friends. They weren't part of this kid's posse or anything. They didn't know the kid, but they helped put these stuff together. I said, why not capture that on an iPhone and put that out and make that your message of what this school is like, instead of the fact that they had a fight yesterday in the cafeteria. We don't do a good job of getting kids and adults to understand that corporate values in a school go a long way towards creating a culture for learning.
I love that example. Are there others that you can share with us that maybe go into that social or that academic domain that will illustrate some of your positions?
Well, positive PR starts with us, the people in the building. We have to be careful how we market what we do in schools. And it goes back to us being a bit like corporate America, in that the messages we take to the public are very powerful. So we're very careful in how we craft what we say to our community. I think that's really important. As far as behavior is concerned, as Harvey said, a lot of times when we talk to kids, we are punitive when it comes to behavior. And we believe that what you should start with are concrete examples of what and why.
Can you give me a concrete example?
Yeah, well, what does courtesy look like? I think courtesy and respect, self-respect, a great example is what we are doing right now. We're having a dialogue, but if I never see that as a student, if my home is somewhat chaotic, if my neighborhood is somewhat chaotic, all I know is chaos. The school has to break that cycle and show you what dignity, respect, self-respect really look
Well,
like.
conflict resolution, one of the things that we typically do in the schools, have you taught kids options to getting into a fight? Because that's the only thing I need to know to do. And by the way, I've got to make sure I save face. And so if you disrespect me, I can only fight back. And the bullying and all that we've talked about, it goes a long way. But do kids know options? And sometimes we assume that kids know options, they just choose the wrong option. That's a bad assumption. Has anybody even shown them, there are other ways you can deal with this and still save face? And so part of what we're saying is, don't just talk to kids about values, don't just talk to adults about them, but first make sure that they have options, that they have tools in their toolkit that they can use.
And I think what we have to keep in mind, and this is extremely important, is that the negatives in communities are often very overt. You don't have to search for them, they are there. Well, in the schoolhouse, where we are in control, we have to make sure that the positives are overt. So we want students to see adults being friendly to one another, being respectful to one another on a daily basis, because children model what they see.
One of the pieces of data, you talked about data, we're data driven. One of the activities we do with staffs is have them list all of the things that they recognize in a school today. What do you value? And they'll say things like a best athlete, most academic math student, most academic English. We'll say, well, let's put those down and put next to it, what is the value? And if all the value is that you have to be the best athlete, you have to be the best student, we'll say, well, how many kids are motivated by that? And typically you're down to maybe the top 10% of your students. Well, where are the values that you celebrate that are only not for the top 10%? What about the other students? What are there options for them to get recognized just for being a good part of this community?
A good person.
Good person.
Let's take that idea about community and expand upon it a little more, because I'm hearing a few different communities. The school community inside the building, the community that a teacher creates in their classroom, but I'm wondering, how does the community at large and parents, how do they fit into your model?
Well, we seek out partnerships with communities. That's extremely important. And you will hear schools talk about parental support or the lack thereof. One of the things that guides what we do is we don't want to punish a child for something a parent does or does not do. So we seek out parental involvement, and sometimes parental involvement is relative. I might be a parent who's working 3 jobs and I can't make the PTA meeting. That doesn't mean I don't love my child. It simply means that I'm in a situation right now where I'm working very hard. So in what ways can the school collaborate with that parent to let them know that we're in this together?
So we all have a role in creating nourishing communities.
Exactly.
I think what we need to do, and John and I have talked about this a lot, sometimes we will see automatically we throw parents under the bus today. We'd say, well, this isn't Ozzie and Harriet land. This isn't where parents used to come at 10 o'clock and come to a PTA meeting at school. That's just the culture that's changed, but that doesn't mean that we can't have expectations for our parents. Right. I think what happens is we've not done that. For example, maybe the best thing you can do to help your child is to sign an agreement with the school or a contract that you will provide a place that's quiet with the TV off, without a lot of media around, for at least 2 hours a night for them to do their work. And maybe that's the best contribution you can make. And if you do that, that helps us do our job.
That's significant.
And it's more important maybe than you even spending than 2 hours at the school at a meeting.
Sure.
Right.
So we have to rethink what the modern family is like and then try to build the expectations for parents around that and then celebrate when people do that.
How do teachers buy into that?
Oh, they love it because they know what they're going through right now. We hear from teachers, I call home, I don't get an answer. Well, you don't get an answer because most likely that parent is at work or maybe unavailable. And we're not in la la land. We realize that there are some parents who are not as involved as we would like. But again, that is something that the child can't control. So let's do the best that we can with that child. And sometimes when a parent who's uninvolved sees a spark in their child, we get them engaged in the process.
We're very invitational with parents, but we got to be very careful when we talk to teachers to say, if your school is not successful, you can't hang that lack of success on the fact that parents aren't involved.
Right.
A lot of times we'll go to school and we'll say, let's change. And what do you want to change? What needs to be changed? We need to get our parents involved. Well, we'll say, yes, we do, but can you control that? We try to get schools to say that's a nice thing to do, and let's be invitational, let's have a lot of opportunities, but let's not hang the success of our students on whether we can get our parents involved, because we can't control that all the time.
Well, let's take that idea a little bit further with the actual planning process and the pacing process that you do with schools when you're asking those tough questions and asking them to put together these ideas. What makes your plan for academic success and achievement so different than so many other plans that are out there?
Well, John and I can talk about this at length, and we'll each take a piece of it, but the first thing, it starts with having everyone participate in the development of the plan. So many times we'll see these are just done to make a check in the box. Okay, we got that plan turned in, we made the check. We kind of believe that everything starts with full disclosure and involvement, that distributed leadership concept. We want everybody in the school that works there to look at the data, to analyze the data, to say, well, why is the data like that? In other words, everybody needs to be involved in the dialogue. We see school plan, the plan itself is the end product. All the 80% of the work that goes in the front of it's what's important.
So each of these leaves are equal in weight in your model. The academic weight is just as important as the social, is just as important as the moral?
Absolutely.
Yes,
So
absolutely.
accountability, academic rigor, standards, assessment, all of those things are in your documents.
Absolutely.
That's true, but
Yes.
it might be the thing that keeps the academic leaf from flourishing is the fact that we haven't nurtured the belief systems in the kids. We haven't given them a connection of the learning to life. And so they don't see why we need to be learning this and how's this going to pay off for me. They're very short-term focused, a lot of kids are. And we have to help them see how this ties to their life and their life earnings and their possibilities for their future. So the idea would be, if you just stay in the academic domain alone, which a lot of people do, you can't sustain that or make it meaningful for kids and teachers over the long haul. That's a quick fix mechanism, but it doesn't sustain you.
And in today's era of public accountability or public school accountability, we have to sustain excellence. It's not okay to hit a peak and then lose or move backward. We have to keep moving forward. We have to sustain excellence in school. And that requires the social and the moral.
So how are they after you leave? You come in, you get them really excited, people are planning, they're looking at change, and then you leave. Are they able to do it on their own?
That's the goal. If you can't sustain what we've put in place for you, then we haven't done our job.
That's right, and that's why you can't come in and say, we are going to fix you. If you have that fix-it mentality,
Right.
or
Right.
come in and say, here's the plan, like, well, I have a plan for you and I never even met you. I never even looked at your data or talked about you. I'm always leery of that because that would suggest the same plan can fix any school. Now, we come in with a process, but we want to engage you in the dialogue, engage you in the solution set, help you build capacity. If I can help you do that, and then I gradually step back. It's kind of like parenting, you don't treat a first grader, you've got to put a fence around a first grader when they're
Right.
outside playing, or a kindergartner, but you wouldn't expect to have that same kind of fence around a student who's 16 years old, 17, 18. Hopefully you begin to build some self-regulation into that student. And it's the same thing when you're working with schools. The idea is you want to show them good processes and good skills,
Right.
but eventually turn it over to them and then watch them work and give them feedback.
Because
And we're going to have to leave it there, John.
Okay.
Wow. I know, it's hard to believe, right? But I would like to give you each a few seconds to just share a final thought with us, something that you'd like to leave us with.
Well, we firmly believe that children in this country can be successful regardless of the neighborhood, regardless of where they come from, who raised them. We believe that academic excellence is possible, and it's our responsibility to make sure it happens.
Yes, we We've never seen any such thing as a throwaway student, a throwaway teacher, or a throwaway administrator or school. It frustrates us a lot when we have people who aren't willing to invest in the schools come back and put a label on a school.
Right.
For us, all schools can be places of excellence, but it does take a team working together. And we have some strategies, I think, that can help any school grow to excellence.
And it takes sweat. You're going to have to work.
You got to work hard.
Hard work, and the
That's right.
journey's it's never too late to start.
Yeah,
No,
that's
no.
right.
Well, thank you so much. And you know, I would ask all of us, where does our journey begin? Maybe it's time for us to take a look around and notice where we are, then carefully plan where it is we need to go. We've heard today that changing course begins with an idea. Let's plant our ideas as we would plant a seed. Select it, nurture it, protect it, and watch it grow. And what was that greatest gift that we can teach a child? It's resiliency. Because when we learn to persevere, despite setbacks, despite roadblocks, we learn to believe that we have what it takes, and that makes our dreams achievable too. I want to thank my guests and you for spending time with us today. For more information about today's topic, to watch this program again, or share it with someone you know, please visit our website, blueridgepbs.org. Programs like this are made possible because of you, and I thank you for your support.